You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
It is a very, very, very happy Saturday as we discuss Michigan's absolute drubbing of Ohio State. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I just got back from being on the ground. I would have done it on the scene if they had lights, but they don't. And I did not bring any lights with me. But Michigan beats Ohio State 45-23 in an absolute domination once everything was said and done. And this has to be probably, I would imagine, just as cathartic as what we saw last year in Ann Arbor, because there's so many different things that come out of this. Ohio State, for a year, for 364 days, have been sitting there saying, just wait until next year. Just wait until next year. Because our players had the flu, they were young, it was snowing, they had all kinds of things that they were saying. And even in the lead up to this one, Michigan without its best player, as Michigan was, as we tried to figure out exactly if Blake Corum was going to be available, if he was going to be able to be productive, they were out there saying, well, look at them piling up the excuses. And now, today, once everything is said and done, there are no excuses to be had from the Michigan side. Ohio State certainly can point to injuries on their end, but none were more costly than what Michigan had lost. In Blake Corum, 70% of the offense being essentially unavailable, played a couple of snaps, and that was it. Clearly was incapable of really doing much. Knowing a little bit more about his injury, it makes sense that he wasn't really going to be terribly productive. But Michigan goes down and out Ohio State for the majority of the game. It was it's weird because offensively, the game plan, I'm not really sure what it was still, even in the aftermath. Maybe I have to, if I go back and rewatch, I'll get a better idea. But I think that they probably went in thinking, okay, Blake might be able to do something. And then he couldn't. 10 yards of total rushing in the first half by the Michigan team. But J.J. McCarthy out there out-dueling C.J. Stroud in the first half for the majority of the game. I mean, it was just a master class. And then the defense was just incredible. Well, we're going to get to all of it here on our post-game here. Just want to look at some of the lines. This is actually some of the first times that I've looked at the lines. J.J. McCarthy only completed 50% of his passes. That's what makes it even more kind of amazing in a lot of ways. And he ran a little bit, but it wasn't anything crazy. He had a long of 19, 6 for 27 with a touchdown. Averaged 4.5 yards per carry. But 263 yards in the game, 3 touchdowns. That was an evisceration. And then you add to the fact that Donovan Edwards added 22 carries for 216 yards. And I said during the game, when talking with a colleague, they were like, why do they keep on running Donovan? Clearly, he's not Blake. He's only getting 2 yards a carry. I said, just you wait. Just you wait. Because not to sound like Hamilton, but it was just a matter of time before that's exactly the type of game he plays. It's 2 yards here, 2 yards there. He isn't the automatic 4 yards a carry type of guy. But then he starts breaking a little bit longer and a little bit longer before he becomes that home run hitter. And remember what I told you about Donovan Edwards and what Ohio State thought of him. Ohio State was really, really adamant that they thought, according to the people I had spoken with during his recruitment, Ohio State had him number 1 on their board. But they got greedy because they knew they could get Travion Henderson. He went to Ohio State sight unseen. They already had Evan Pryor. They thought we could get all 3 in one class, which makes sense given how Ohio State has tended to operate. They do that with receivers all the time, right? They get the number 1 receiver, the number 2 receiver. They get all kinds of receivers. So they thought, I mean, they had a 4-star in Evan Pryor. They had a 5-star in Travion Henderson, and they muffed the recruitment of Donovan Edwards, who had to be talked out of committing to Ohio State multiple times. Ends up burning them in the biggest way. Cornelius Johnson obviously had his best game ever as a Wolverine. 4 catches for 160 yards, 2 touchdowns, including a long of 75 yards. Came down with 4 of 6 throws that went his way. It was just one of those things where Cornelius Johnson was the one who got them going, and then Donovan Edwards ended up being the dagger that finished the game. Ultimately, 278 yards passing, 252 yards rushing. I mean, it was as good as you could hope. And it's not like Ohio State didn't play well. If you look at their stat line, I mean, it's pretty good. Pretty good for the most part. Now, I don't really know why they didn't run Dallin Hayden, considering that was all the talk going into the week. I mean, Mayan Williams got 8 carries for 34 yards. Deontay Tranum is the one who got the majority of the carries. You might remember him from being as they call him down there, Chip Tranum. You might remember him as being a guy that everyone thought was going to transfer to Michigan, ended up picking Ohio State. He's from Akron, I believe. 14 carries, 83 yards. 143 yards rushing. It's 4.9 yards per carry overall on 29 carries. 349 yards in overall. But 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns for CJ Stroud. Masterclass in defense, especially second half. Jesse Minter, the second half adjustments, they come roaring back after a week off. Michigan outscored Ohio State 28-3 in the second half. Think about that. Outscored Ohio State 28-3. 22-point win. Is that an homage to the fact that that was the first win in Columbus in 22 years? I don't know. But, I mean, it was something to behold. If you would have told me after the first quarter Michigan would win in a blowout fashion, I would not have believed you. I went into the game extremely confident. I've done this before. I know I predicted Ohio State to win 30-20, where I have a feeling that Michigan's going to win. I'll tell anyone who will listen kind of privately, but I put something else on paper. And for those of you who, I saw only one person, but for those of you dragging me on Twitter, have at it. Because aren't you happy that my prediction didn't come true? That wasn't a want. That was just a prediction. And I certainly wasn't the only one. You know, I had plenty of my colleagues who thought that Michigan had a really good shot, really kind of thought Michigan was going to win, had picked Ohio State to win the game. Didn't go that way. Now Michigan is the Big Ten East Division champions for the second straight year, going to the Big Ten championship game for the second straight year, going to the college football playoff assuredly for the second straight year, and has a really good chance to go deep, if not all the way. Because Michigan went out and beat Ohio State by 22 points without its best player. Think about that for a second. Went on the road to Columbus and beat Ohio State without Michigan did not have its best player. Now, you can sit there and say Ohio State didn't have its best player in Jackson Smith-Njigba. And that's fair, but they played pretty much the entire year without Jackson Smith-Njigba and were still expected to beat Michigan. It's like Michigan last year being without Ronnie Bell, essentially. You know, it's a little bit different when you lose a guy in week 11 compared to when you really haven't had that guy all year. You've adjusted. Michigan had Marvin Harrison Jr. got 7 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown. Emeka Egbuka, 9 receptions for 125 yards. Just they got theirs. Just like last year. And just like last year, Ohio State is going to the Rose Bowl. All right, let's continue on talking about this game. Obviously, a lot to get into here. This episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Listen, it's a little bit outdated in the sense of, you know, we've already covered it. But for next week, you can sit there and you can go and you can say, how many do I want J.J. McCarthy by? How many do I want Donovan Edwards by? That's the great thing about Underdog Fantasy. It is like fantasy football meets over-under with betting. It's incredible. You just go and you identify the players that you are going to choose in your pick'em and go and make your own picks. It's absolutely incredible. It's easy to play. It's available in over 30 states. Just pick between 2 and 5 players across any team, not just Michigan, and decide if they will finish higher or lower. One of the easiest fantasy to play games out there, and you can win cold hard cash in a single game. We'll assuredly be doing this next week, I would imagine. Had some phone technical difficulties that kept me from doing it in the last couple weeks here, but we will try to do it publicly next week. So sign up with the promo code Locked On. It's all one word, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Deposit $100, get $100 free. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On, all one word. Get in on the college football pick'em action today. All right, I think that this has got to be, and I'm looking forward to rewatching the game here momentarily after we finish all of this. I'm going to go upstairs. I've got a lot to do. You're going to find out how much we got going on, and you'll find out why there were some absences this week soon, because this is the last time in the studio. This is the last time. So last go around. One last time, George Washington. I'm going to keep invoking Hamilton. I listened to Hamilton all the way down to Columbus and halfway back once we got to USC's halftime. But so this is the last go in the studio. And it's going to be a change. We're just going to have to deal with different surroundings for a little while, but it'll be good. Anyway, let's get into this Ohio State thing. Michigan did some things in the game, after the game. Now, no, Jim Harbaugh didn't come out and have a third base comment or anything. He didn't say anything about Ryan Day or Ohio State or anything like that in that type of way. The players did say they could feel Ohio State tapping out somewhere in the third quarter, which is kind of incredible because they weren't like road grading in terms of going out there and rushing the ball, right? They weren't doing that. So it makes it all the more interesting that they were able to get them to tap out. But you could see it even when Ohio State was up. They weren't even up. Once it was 10-10, it seemed pretty evident that they were starting to feel it. The crowd just felt on unease. They just were not at ease at all. And the way that I could tell, because like Michigan players said that, Mike Sanders still said I could see over on their sidelines. And by the way, that play that Mike Sanders still had, I spoke to Jason Avant after the game, and he said, he wasn't actually even supposed to be on Cade Stover. It was supposed to be Will Johnson, and he vacated the area. Cade Stover streaks over, and Mike Sanders still sees it and reacts. Huge play. Potentially game-saving play. I know Michigan was up by 11, but that was potentially a huge game-saving play. Because in my head, in those moments, I could see Ohio State scoring 7, and then suddenly Michigan gives the ball back. Suddenly Ohio State drives the field, and you know how they operate. But incredible work by the Michigan defense to keep everything in front of them, make Ohio State work for it, just like last year. But this time, instead of having guys getting in the backfield and getting sacks, I kept on seeing holds that went uncalled. But instead of that, what they did was they were just like, we're just going to cover your guys so well. So there were a lot of coverage sacks, essentially. Made things uncomfortable in a different way for CJ Stroud. It was a masterful game plan on the defense. And once Michigan started doing that, because Marvin Harrison, some of his catches were insane. It was like last year, right? There's just ones where there's no way you can cover it. It's just what it is. But Michigan found ways to make that happen less and less. And that is just insane. But really, just the fact that Cornelius Johnson, the pass game, finally hitting on some deep balls. I think we all did not anticipate that they would have success in that way, right? Because we hadn't seen it all year. You go up against, theoretically, the most difficult opponent, and they're hitting on them. Now, as I was saying, the way that I could tell that Ohio State was starting to tap out, I think it was on their final touchdown, which came in the first half. you could see when they do the swinging arms back and forth when they're about to kick off. Normally when they're rolling, when they're into it, they're really swinging those arms, right? They look fired up, and I'm not going to lie, it looks cool. I hate it, but it looks cool. And guys did not have the zeal behind it. It felt really weird for a team that just took the lead to go in the locker room at halftime in their home stadium with the lead. But you could see that they did not have it. Pretty amazing that Michigan's defensive front and offensive front really were able to do what they were able to do. Those Donovan Edwards 75 and 85 yarders. The 75 yarder was the longest rush in the history against Ohio State in the rivalry history. And it was topped immediately afterwards by an 85-yard rush. That is why you don't give up on Donovan Edwards carrying the ball. At Michigan, I thought made some mistakes. I thought the 57-yarder by Jake Moody was a mistake. I think that, that they were having a hard time moving the ball. Don't give them a shorter field than you have to. Pin them deep. But you know what? They got out of it. Michigan, I was saying before the game, talking to anyone who would listen, like I said, I'm talking to John Jansen, I'm talking to other people, and I'm saying I could see Michigan going out there and having a similar performance as it did against Penn State, but I didn't know how it was going to happen if Blake Corum was slowed up. So first quarter was a lot of, nightmares realized in the sense, because on that second carry, as he left the field, it was evident that he was not going to be able to play another down. It was just absolutely evident. And yet, they prevailed. They found a way. And not only found a way, they made it emphatic. Now Ohio State is left with zero excuses. And I'm curious to see, I can't wait to go on social media and just see what they're saying. But they're left with zero excuses. Ryan Day officially has a Michigan problem. One game is an anomaly. Two is a trend. And right now, Ohio State haven't beaten Michigan since November of 2019. No game in 2020. Lost in 2021. Lost in 2022. Now they've got to wait another year. And that one's not going to be an easy one. You can sit there and say you're scarred. You can sit there and say you want revenge all you want. That's how Michigan used to feel. Now, Michigan clearly has Ohio State's number. Kind of like in the sense that Michigan State, whenever they've begged Michigan to pay enough attention to them, Ohio State begged Michigan to take them as seriously as they take them. And unfortunately for Ohio State, now that Michigan it has not worked in their favor the last two times. And for any Ohio State fan that's out there sitting there thinking, well, we'll just get them next year. We've won so many in the last however. Guess what? Michigan fans were thinking the same thing in 2005, 2006, heck, even 2004, right? Michigan fans were thinking, there's no way that this is going to continue. We are going to get back in this thing and we're going to continue our dominance. This is how things start. And going and breaking a 22-year streak is a heck of a coming out party, an emphatic statement by Michigan. In my opinion, Michigan should be ranked number 1 after this week. Do I think that it's a fully complete team? I'm not so sure. I mean, they can do a little bit of everything. If you remember back to my post-Iowa, I said Michigan can beat you any way that you want. It's like the basketball teams we saw in late John Beilein, early Juwan. They can beat you any way you want. You want to run? We're going to run. You want to we'll slow things down? We'll slow things down. But they found a way to win, and they did it convincingly. They beat an undefeated team in the final week of the regular season at home by 22 points. Tell me who's got a better win. Georgia's win against Tennessee had lost a lot of its luster in that South Carolina game. And that was, I believe, a home game for Georgia. Completely different scenario going into the shoe against a team that many thought had a strong chance to win the national championship, that had been number 1 in a lot of power rankings throughout the year. And you just made them look silly. So that's where we're at. All right, we are going to continue on here momentarily. But listen, inflation has us all thinking about different ways to cut back, whether it's driving less, dining out less, buying less from the grocery store. We can all agree there's nothing fun about less. That's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With Upside, I don't have to cut back because I get cash back on every purchase. To get started, you download the free Upside app. Use my promo code LOCKED and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Check in at the business, pay as usual with a credit or debit card, and get paid. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every single week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. Download the free Upside app. Use the promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using the promo code LOCKED. All right, let's finish this out here. Michigan is going to go to Indianapolis, and they're going to play essentially a road game in a way. Maybe, kind of, probably not. But they're playing Purdue, I think West Lafayette's about an hour away, if that, from Indianapolis. I don't know. I stayed, when Michigan played Purdue in 2017, I stayed kind of halfway between Indianapolis and West Lafayette. But Michigan should be in, regardless of what happens. But I would be surprised if Michigan lost to Purdue. But it is Purdue's first time there. They're going to be, up and raring to go. I think this is a tougher test than Iowa was last year. But it's amazing. I was driving home, and I was talking to my best friend on the way home, and I said, it just hit me that Michigan's 12-0. They finished out the regular season undefeated, and it's been 25 years since that happened. 25 years. Quarter century after the last time they went undefeated in the regular season. Here Michigan is with an opportunity to win it all. Certainly, I would think that if say Michigan's number 1, I don't think they will be, but I think they should be. I think that they'd end up playing USC. I think they'd win that game. If they're number 2, they'll be playing TCU. I think they'll win that game. That is also the beauty of the way that Michigan beat Ohio State, is because if one or the other team won by 3 points, guess what? Both are getting in. This year, with TCU currently undefeated and in a situation where they can probably afford to lose the Big 12 championship game. As I say this, USC is up 10 on Notre Dame. Maybe that changes. Maybe this is outdated by the time it's published. I'm not sure. But it is a situation where basically Michigan landed the blow that said, Ohio State, you are not worthy of being in. Have fun in Pasadena. It is it's 60. You're going to need a jacket at this time of year or that time of year. It's going to be a little chilly potentially, but welcome back. I know you said Rose Bowls weren't your thing. I hope the Rose Bowl committee is nice to you regardless of you going out there and saying that. And this is kind of why I didn't like the whole idea of the, how can Michigan get in when they lose to Ohio State? Because it's like, well, this game should be the knockout blow, right? If you don't beat your rival, then you don't get that opportunity. So the fact that Michigan went out, handled business, did it, again, workmanlike. I'm really curious to see what Boo Corrigan says about Michigan. I'm curious to see what Heather Dinich says about Michigan after all of this. It's the best win of the 2022 college football season. There's no one else that has a better win. And there's nothing Ohio State can do about it, except for Stu. CJ Stroud will have likely gone winless against Michigan in his career. He picked going to Ohio State over Michigan. Michigan had the offer to him, was courting him. Didn't work out that way. I believe that was the J.D. Johnson scenario that made it so Michigan was going after him. So, unfortunately for Ohio State, he made the wrong choice. Unfortunately for Ohio State, they made the wrong choice with Donovan Edwards. Because now, Donovan Edwards is 2-0 against Michigan. CJ Stroud is 0-2. And he had a decent game. CJ Stroud did. Donovan Edwards, JJ McCarthy had better ones. Once everything was cumulatively said and done. So now Michigan gets to go to Indianapolis for the second straight year. And it's, like I said, I kind of expected it. And one of those, even though I predicted otherwise, like I told my best friend earlier in the week, I said, for someone who just sent in my score prediction to 11 Warriors, I am off preparing as far as like doing certain things as if they're going to Indianapolis. I did not do that in 2016 or 2018. There was no part of me that was like, okay, I need to make sure that I didn't have Zuri, but there was no part of me that was like, okay, I got to make sure that we have this and this and this, and we got to make sure that, I got to know that weekend's free and blah, blah, blah. Didn't have any of that. Did this year, did last year. Predicted Michigan to lose both games. So maybe I need to continue to pick Michigan to lose against Ohio State, because I think all of the other years I picked Michigan to win. Even 2019, I think I might have. And both times I picked Michigan to lose, Michigan wins. So that's that. All right, that's going to do it for us today with the post game. Don't know if we'll have an episode on Monday. We'll try, but like I said, this is the last one here, so we'll see. Things are going to be a little bit in flux this next week, but we will see how. We'll try to figure it out, because obviously it's a big week. Michigan potentially going to win yet another Big Ten championship. All right, so that'll do it. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching and or listening. Peace.